welcome back to Desi's Unite. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite light sets, which is Boss Pro Lights. I'm probably saying the exact title incorrectly, but check the description for a link to this product. And as you can see, I have a fairly eclectic collection of characters here, and I wanted to show a lot of different kinds of skins, different kinds of characters, and what they would look like in different lighting scenarios. What this particular tutorial is not going to cover is the really in-depth info on how to set up a 3-point light system and that kind of thing. This is more about how to use Boss Pro lights in the best way you can, and a lot of it just comes down to turning lights on and off and seeing what you like, what you don't like. Early on, I found Boss Pro lights kind of confusing, and I tried it once and then got confused and frustrated and stopped using it. And then I kept hearing how great it was from friends, and I decided to give it another go, and I read the instructions more carefully the second time. And then I started to figure it out. And I wish there were some certain things that I really wish I had known when I first started using it, and I'm hoping to lessen your learning curves by just showing you some of my tips and tricks. So let's get started. So first of all, just so you can see, I really just have the basic HDR that comes pre-packed with DAZ Studio, the Ruins B500 HDR. And it's set to dome and scene, and the draw ground is on, so that's why you see the shadow there. So I'm going to get rid of the draw ground, and I'm also going to go to scene only. So now we're black. Okay. So here's Boss Portrait Light Set. That's what we're called. You can do a few different things to start out, and what I'm going to do first and foremost is show you my base set that I always use. What I have is I have a template file that I either launch initially or I will merge it into my scene. And basically that is probably going to be character template. I'm going to start off by looking at my best camera angle visual aid. It's set to turn off, but in the actual Boss Pro set, this is defaulted to being on. As you can see, it has a kind of plane that it sets there, and there's this red mark on the floor. It tells you where to have your character's face, and it really does help with getting your lighting just right, because basically that's what this is. It's Boss Pro Portrait is meant to really just make everything quicker and easier, and just with a click of a button you have some lighting in your scene, and then you can go in and tweak it and fine-tune it as needed, depending on which way you have your character facing in the scene, what environments you put in the scene, architecture, all that kind of thing. This is my favorite setup, and I think what I started with was I started with this one, Soft. Okay, all of these are scripts, and you just double click on them and it puts a bunch of lights in your scene. In my case, most often I will do full portraits of characters in different poses without a background, without any kind of backdrop. So that's the typical thing that I tend to do, and then I pop those characters after I've rendered them. I pop them into cover designs and other types of things. So that's the one I started with. So I double clicked it when I started using it, and it popped these two in. Let's see, there's Boss Lights, the main one, and for whatever reason that's always turned off. And I have yet to figure out what the Boss Pro Phantom light is for. I'm sure it has an excellent purpose, and one day I'm going to figure it out. And if you already know what the answer is, feel free to comment and let me know in the comments. Okay, there's the primary lights and the secondary lights. And I have these all set up to be on and or off, depending on what my my default preferences. And I have found that I really like to have the main two softbox key fill and the main key fill and the soft key fill. And it actually helpfully tells you the range. So that's kind of nice. And you can kind of essentially have your iRay view on, NVIDIA iRay view on, and just start turning lights on and off. As you can see, there's quite a big difference with the main off. So I'm going to turn that back on, and now you can see more light, just simply more light. And then there's a nice soft key fill, and that's off to the side. And actually, I think it's above. As you can see, this is some fairly flat lighting, and it's mostly right in their faces. This is interesting. You can see a kind of honeycomb effect. That's what this thing is here. And it's kind of putting a sharp light on the side of her. So that's the rim lights highlighting her back. I'll zoom out and show you these, what they actually look like in the scene for reference. Okay, so that actually will highlight the tops of their hair. And then here's another one in a different area on the other side. Then there's this one adds a really sharp rim light on the back. And of course, you can always start with the default settings that it comes with. It will have some turned on and some turned off. I found early on that I didn't, for my purposes, I didn't like to have a lot of rim lights, so I kept most of that off. The reason being is I sell stock art. For that purpose, the use of rim light is problematic. Most designers who buy from me or authors who buy from me want to have a more even lighting. Okay, so that's another rim light from another direction. All right, so then we have edgy overhead, and this is another one I don't usually use. It's quite sharp, but as you can see, it's very beautiful. It really highlights the hair. This is one I use all the time. I like to make sure the legs are highlighted. So that's over on the side. And this one is problematic for me a lot of times. If I have my character spread out too far length or landscape-wise, so to speak, I will end up with a sharp shadow on their arm a lot of times. And as you can see, the Hagrid character on the left with the red hair, she is quite a bit in shadow. So I tend not to ever use that one if I can help it. It's more for, I would say it's probably better for portraits. This one casts a hard left shadow. I really like the fact that it explains what each one does, so you can more quickly make a choice. And the other one, I won't use that one. This one is another one I don't tend to use. There's a reason why. It's because I'm usually working pretty fast, and I don't like the sharp, crisp light it throws on the ears and across the middle of the back of the head. I have difficulty really editing that in post-work. So one thing that if you wanted to use that one, you can see how close it is to the back of the head, and that's why it's such a sharp light. You can actually adjust it, and you can adjust all these lights, and I'll tell you how in a minute. Right over here, when you look at each light, they all have their own translate dials, rotate dials, and scale dials. But if you actually go in there, you can see that they have a lock button on them. They're all locked. I think almost all of them are locked to start out with. And what I ended up doing was I was getting annoyed with having to unlock the ones that I wanted. And then once it's unlocked, then you can start moving it around, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that one off. Sorry, it's going a little bit slowly because I have so much hair and characters in the scene. It's kind of getting overloaded here. These are interesting because they do add some complexity. They all are center and back wall. All in all, I find this to be a really robust lighting set, and I've really enjoyed using it for my purposes. Here's center fill, large. And then lastly, there's a face profile one. As you can see, it's right up there above and behind them. hopefully that gives you an overview of just the general purpose lighting setup that you can have. I'm not showing all of the lights, and as you can see, there's actually kind of a wide plane to kind of give you a sense of where the lights are going to be showing. So you want to kind of stick your characters in that general area. And again, here's like another honeycomb filter that kind of diffuses the light. For your reference, when you're using a 3-point lighting system, this is far more than 3 lights. But if you were talking about a basic 3-point lighting system, you have a key light, which is the main light. And then you have a fill light, which kind of is off to the side. And oftentimes it's a different color than the main white front light. For example, it might be if you want it to be like a sunset scene, you might make it a red tone or hue. And if you want, say, a cool night scene, it would be potentially a blue color. So then the final one is a rim light, and that is behind the character, kind of silhouetting them, or so to speak, or really highlighting their edges. So hopefully that gives you a general sense of how lighting works. I'm going to delete this, and let's just look briefly at some of the other lighting setups that they have. There's a dramatic one, for example. Now, I should back up for a second. You can insert literally every light in the full set all together, and there's even a dummy person. Actually, let me just go ahead and do that. Oops, no, I forget. You can't do that. You have to start with that scene. So just remember that if you want to use the full light set, you have to create that first and then load your character into it. I had forgotten about that because I never used that. There's also a smaller subset. And then I guess there's some rendered settings too to make it even more fine-tuned. I don't use that one. I use one of these. And I never use the backdrops either because I don't need them for my purposes. But you can certainly dump those into the scene and check them out and see how they work. Anytime you just see a face, that is really more of a portrait setup. And so you can have dramatic like this, or you can have a softer, more even lighting. This one is a little bit in between. It's more complex, lots of different lights around them, but it's soft, a little bit softer than this dramatic one. And again, this is another subset. This is another different one. This is more specifically for a face profile. So it sets up lights that are great for that. Again, another softer one as opposed to the more dramatic style. And then we've got some more full length. Again, the same type of thing. There's sort of a more well-lit, then there's dramatic one, and then this is the one I tend to use, I believe. And then there's some other ones that are even more dark and dramatic. Yeah, I still don't know what the phantom light is. I wonder if it's a ghost light. I'm sure somebody watching this out there knows the answer, and I'm just dying to know. Because I don't remember seeing anything about the phantom light in the instructions, and it does come with instructions, and I do recommend that you read them. I think it was a PDF file that came with the product, so definitely check that out. So let's just try something more dramatic, and let's see what happens. Interesting. It almost looks like it wants you to face the characters. Well, I don't know, the text is facing us, so maybe this is correct. That's interesting. I kind of like it. And it looks like it has some kind of other lighting. I don't know if it's the exact same set. Let's see, I'm just turning them all on just so I can see what happens. It looks to me like it's all the same lights. It's just when you're doing the dramatic style with the darker lighting system, you have most of the lights turned off and just certain specific ones that are really throwing light on them, like rim style. So I suspect that's how it is. It's like you've got the same lighting setup, you just are using different lights within the same thing. Interesting. So that's kind of cool now that I'm looking at it. I'll have to use that more often for my own projects. And let's take a look at this one. It's really nice even lighting. A little more complex than the one that I use typically. And let's zoom in and perhaps look at Carissa, because I think she is facing, or she's more dead center than everybody else. So let's try a dramatic portrait for her. Now, of course, you can always toss in a HDR. If you're going to use mesh lights, that's what these are. These are mesh lights. Then you wouldn't be able to do sun and sky setting. But you could do dome and scene and have more complex lighting even than this. And you'd have a lot of overhead even lighting with an HDR included in the scene. So that's something. And yeah, anyway, you can see quite a dramatic look for her. And depending on how you want to set her face, that would be kind of interesting. So this gives you a general idea of how everything fits together, and you can mix and match. And I actually do recommend making a template file. You basically dump these lights into a scene, get it the way you want it, shining on a particular figure. Then you shut off or turn on lights as you see fit, and then save the file as just, a lighting template, and then you can merge it into any scene that you want, and it makes everything faster, and I really recommend it. As you can see right here, you've got that's that really sharp, almost crystallized looking light on her forehead, or on her temple and hair. I don't like that, so in this case, I would probably unlock that light and move it backward. So always remember that that's an option, because you may like a light, but it's just too harsh and too close to their face, and you really want it to be more diffused, then you can certainly do that. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions about this particular product or lighting in general. I will hopefully be able to answer. Thank you so much for watching Dazzies Unite. I really appreciate it. And if you want to keep seeing more of these videos, hit the little bell icon and it will notify you when I have a new one out. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time.